welcome back to the EaglePod. Today we're joined by Lyra Morina, a fifth-year MD PhD student at Washington University in St. Louis School of Medicine. Lyra is completing her PhD in the lab of Dr. Todd Finnegar, where she studies CAR engineered natural killer cells and their role in follicular lymphoma. With a diverse background spanning immunology, molecular biology, and translational research, she is passionate about developing cancer immunotherapies and mentoring the next generation of physician scientists. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I'm really excited to be here.
So, just starting off, can you just tell us about your childhood and what it was like just growing up in an Albanian family?
Yes, of course. So I was born in Prizren in Kosovo, and that's a really big part of my identity because I was very lucky enough to fly back home and visit home every summer and spend all 3 months there. I'd often come back to school like a day or two late because we wanted to spend as much of our summers there as possible. So I grew up speaking Albanian with my family. Like my immediate family, my parents and my siblings, but also with my extended family. But when I was 6 years old, so this was a few years after the war happened in Kosovo, my dad, who trained to be a physician, took a job working for a nonprofit in public health, just because things were very different during and after the war in Kosovo, and it was very hard to actually practice medicine there at the time as a Kosovar person. And so he ended up working in public health, and we moved to Zambia when I was 6. So I started first grade in English, and I remember taking English lessons very briefly before we moved because all of a sudden I needed to go to school in a different language. But I mean, you're 6, so you pick up things pretty
Yeah.
quickly. So that was pretty easy to transition. And I loved going to school. My school was amazing. It was an American international school in Zambia called AIS, and I had a good experience there. And so when I started fourth grade, we moved again to Uganda, and that's where I feel like I remember the most because that was like fourth grade to 10th grade. It was the majority of my childhood. But something I remember distinctly actually is in general, there's not many Albanians wherever you go. I mean, there's a few pockets that are big hubs in the US of the diaspora, but especially in Africa, not really. And
Yeah.
so everybody was pronouncing my name in different ways. And so when I was about 6 or 7, I decided to just go by Lyra because it's very hard to pronounce Lyra. Like the L doesn't exist, the U doesn't exist, the R doesn't exist. All of
Yeah.
75% of my
Yeah.
name is not a letter in English alphabet.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Like I'm so used to it now that if somebody calls me Jura and they're not part of my family, it kind of feels like weird.
Yeah.
So I've gone by Lyra my whole life pretty much since I was 6, so it's very normal to me. But just part of like the Albanian American experience is sometimes our names are very hard to pronounce, especially if people can't roll their R's. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, so when I was
I can't roll my R's.
really,
My
that's
family makes fun of me for it, but I really can't. And the
it's not
Albanian word
easy.
for husband?
Yeah, bure.
Yeah, I don't say it like that. It sounds so bad.
That's so funny. No, that makes sense. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So basically, to wrap up my childhood, when I was in 10th grade or 15, I moved to the US. We moved to Maryland. Same thing, basically, for my dad's work for the same
Mhm.
nonprofit. And ever since I've been in the States, so my career trajectory changed because I originally thought of going to college in the UK and maybe somewhere in Europe. But obviously now we're much further from home. But
Mhm.
I really, really love the science and medical career paths available in the US. And so I don't think I'll be moving back to Europe, but I definitely miss it. And I miss the quality of life there a bit
Yeah.
more than here.
Yeah,
But
I
in terms
know.
of science, it's incredible. I don't think there's many places where I could be a physician scientist. The US is very unique in that regard.
Yeah. How was it like coming like from Africa to the States? That's like a I
Well,
don't know. How is life over there? I'm just
I got a
curious.
lot of Mean Girls references in my first week of school. I
Oh.
got a lot of like, if you're from Africa, why are you white kind
Oh
of
my
thing.
God.
Which is I guess, valid question, but also there's a lot of ethnic diversity in Africa,
Yeah.
so also totally not appropriate to say
Yeah.
that. But I would say because I was in this international school bubble living there, I didn't necessarily experience what it's like to live like in Uganda as a local Ugandan. So to preface what I'm saying with that, it's not completely the most honest perspective, but it's honest in terms of what I experienced. So I really enjoyed living there. It's so beautiful. The weather is amazing. I didn't experience winter basically from the age of 6 to 15. So I learned how to ski last weekend because
Oh,
I
wow.
literally never went skiing. If I had been in Kosovo, like I would have been skiing all the time because
Yeah.
skiing is like 30 minutes from
Yeah.
Prizren or less. But it was cool to have that experience. A lot of people would ask like, "Oh, like how do you find food? Do you have to go hunting?" Like I think especially in
Oh
the
my
early
God.
2000s, I think in the early 2000s, the
Yeah.
perception of Africa was really bad because there was not a lot of social
Yeah.
media. And so, like, all you
That's
saw is what was on the news, and the news
yeah.
had really negative portrayals
Yeah.
of a lot of developing countries. I
Yeah.
mean, they still do today.
Yeah.
So, I think it's pretty fun to live there, honestly. I highly recommend if anybody ever has the opportunity to do any sort of work or like just travel, definitely go to different parts of Africa. Obviously, Africa is very different depending on where
Yeah.
you go, but like at least I got to experience the East Coast.
Yeah.
And the southern parts, like we went to South Africa and Kenya for fun. They're gorgeous. They have so many cool opportunities. So, like any country, you have to be aware of like any safety
That's
concerns,
true.
but
Yeah.
overall, fun.
Mm. So when you did move to the States, just like adapting to the school system here, was that a big change?
I would say moving between international schools in Africa was pretty similar, but moving here was very different
Mm.
because it was my first time going to a public school, first of all, because a lot of those schools are private schools, but they're also kind of covered by the nonprofits you work for. So it was like a very different experience. Also, I had to switch from the AP system to, sorry, the IB system to the AP system. So everything was very like standardized, multiple choice because my classes were way bigger and the
Mm.
teachers can't like handle grading per response from every single student. And so I really had to learn a lot about standardized testing. And that was challenging at first because I was a really good student growing up, but I wasn't used to that way of being asked questions. So it was definitely a struggle in the beginning, but I was very dedicated to making sure I could succeed in school because that was always a huge priority of mine. And I figured it out. It was just really hard at first, but I would just do extra questions, study extra hours until I really got into the groove of that. And so obviously I realized when I moved to the States, people have this, I mean, there's a lot of intergenerational knowledge that's passed down when you grow up in America as an American. Like your great grandparents will have told your parent, like everybody will tell each other, like, how do you prepare for getting into a good school? Like, how do you prepare for retirement? And so there's all these like unwritten rules that nobody tells you when you move to the US.
Yeah.
And so I had to like figure that out so fast because I had to apply to college 2 years after moving here. And I noticed like that there were certain things I could not do. Like it was impossible for me to like perfectly catch up to students at my level, but I really tried my best and I was really proud of my application by the time I applied to college. I mean, I took like 7 AP exams in 2 years, which was not typical, and did very well. So I'm proud of how high school went, and
Yeah.
I think I did the best I could under the circumstances. But that's just something that a lot of people don't talk about. So I'm really grateful you asked that question because if anyone's ever in that situation, moving to the US, I would want them to know that they're not alone in that.
When did you feel first drawn to science and medicine? What made you think like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because it is a big step to go get your MD and then get your PhD.
So the short answer is I've loved science since I can remember. I really liked the idea of experiments since I was very little. I would just like, I don't know, put baking soda and random things in the kitchen together and be like, this is my experiment. It's like, I don't even know what was in there. I obviously supervised by my parents, so I didn't want any sort of like chemical
Yeah.
reaction. That was fun. I mean, I remember going to the library every week. I really loved reading as a kid, and I would get like 3 or 4 mystery books that would be really fun. And then I'd get like a science book related to something we were learning in school because I wanted to know more about it, or I wanted to do like little DIY projects at home related to it. So I definitely think that was the part of just like my spark. And I love that my parents really encouraged it too. So when I would go up to them and ask them, like, oh, well, like, why does the moon look so close? Like, or why does the moon look so far right now? And like, they wouldn't just brush it off. They actually would engage in conversation with me and really, really like encourage that curiosity, which I really appreciate because I realize now as I'm getting older, I'm like, wow, I'm so tired sometimes. Like, I can't believe they would have the patience about that with the
Yeah.
child after work. So that's sweet of them. I hope to be just even a fraction of as amazing as a parent as my parents were one day. So the short answer is I've always loved science, but the medicine part was kind of a surprise because when I was in college, I started school thinking I wanted to get a PhD and do research and become a scientist. I was a biology major. I was surrounded by pre-med friends because they were in the bio major with me. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely not pre-med because I think there's a lot of like pre-med culture things that kind of deter you a little bit if you already know you weren't going to go into med school.
Yeah.
So I was just definitely very confident in that. And then I went to meet with a family friend who was a PI at the University of Maryland, and he was an MD but did research for most of his career, but also saw patients. And he said to me, "Have you ever considered doing an MD PhD?" And I said, "What is that?" And so this is a pretty common experience for a lot of MD PhDs, unless their parents were in this field. They just had never heard of this combination. And so he said basically you would get your medical degree and your PhD, and you can become a doctor, see patients, and also run a lab. I said, that sounds fascinating, but I'm taking my GRE next week and I'm applying to PhD programs like in a few months. So should I really pivot and change my mind and my career completely? Felt like a really big decision. So I started to freak out a little
Yeah.
bit. So I went to the pre-med office and I felt like such an intruder because my friends had been going there for years and I was like about to be a senior and going there for the first time. And my advisor, Courtney, was amazing. She was like, you can definitely look into this, see if you like it, and you can take gap years. It's really not that big of a deal to take some time off of school before you start graduate school. And so I thought about it and I said, okay, let's try this out. So I did a summer internship at the University of Maryland's medical school. I really loved the translational research I did there, but it was also the first time I ever shadowed. So that was huge to me because it really changed my mind. And they were very focused on explaining how important translational research is, how you can help patients with the research that you do. And that resonated with me so deeply because I always loved research that had impacts on healthcare. Like even when I worked on mosquitoes in undergrad, what drove me is disease transmission or just like the potential to prevent zoonotic diseases from forming in the like city areas, which was one of the focuses of my projects. And so I was really fascinated by this and basically decided to change my mind and do the MD PhD, especially after seeing how much I loved working with patients and interacting with patients. And so I took a few years off, worked at the NIH, did research, worked on getting more clinical and volunteering hours for medical school applications, and then applied and started school in 2021.
Nice, nice. How was it getting those clinical hours? Did you do shadowing or
I
uh
mostly shadowed a
okay.
lot. I think people usually have a mix in their application of shadowing and clinical volunteering. I did some clinical volunteering during my gap years. So because I was working full time as a research postbac at NIH, I asked my mentor if they were okay with me taking half a day off a month to go clinical volunteering. Um, and I basically said I'm happy to stay late those days to make up the hours. And that was the deal I made with my mentor and they were happy with that. So I did some clinical volunteering at Walter Reed Medical Center, which was an incredible opportunity. I mean, the presidents get treated there. So
Mhm.
obviously I didn't
Yeah.
meet any presidents, but still
Yeah, I was
really
gonna be like, did you meet anyone?
cool. But when actually when President Trump was being treated for COVID, I was working across the street and there was like so many people outside. Like I was going into lab to like add media to my cell lines because NIH and Walter Reed are across the street from
Yeah.
each other. And it was just like, wow, I can't believe like that's
That's
happening right
cool. Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, you do research in cancer immunology. Can you share what that focuses on specifically and how that's been going for you? Any papers published that I can link down below?
Oh my gosh. I will, but hopefully soon. I'm hoping to submit my first few papers this year as I'm wrapping up my PhD. But the general concept of cancer immunology is just so fascinating. When I was doing that summer internship that I mentioned between my junior and senior year of college is when where I absolutely fell in love with this idea because so we have our immune systems and everybody thinks of our immune systems as a way to fight off infection. But what we don't realize is actually our immune systems are actually fighting off cancer as well in our own bodies. But the fact that they can even do that is really, really wild because a cancer cell is our own cells. So they normally shouldn't be killing their own cells, but it means our own cell has mutated or changed so much that now it's starting to look different or foreign, kind of like a virus or a bacteria. And so our immune system then kills that cell. Now, obviously, this doesn't always work perfectly, otherwise, cancer wouldn't exist. But it does actually happen all the time in our bodies. It's just when the cancer develops to an extent that's too hard to overcome, then we end up having a diagnosis and being treated in the hospital. So, what scientists have done is take our immune system and study how it kills cancer, and then find ways to reinforce it and make our immune system stronger. That way, we can eliminate the cancer cells. And that's exactly what my PhD is focused on. So, those chimeric antigen receptors or CARs that you mentioned in my bio are basically receptors. And a receptor is usually just a protein expressed on the cells. So, if you imagine having a white blood cell or immune cell, such as a natural killer cell, but there's many other types, such as T cells. So if you have this natural killer cell and it expresses this protein or receptor on its surface, it now has like a way to detect cancer. And so that NK cell or natural killer cell will then, when it enters your bloodstream, specifically go to where your tumor is and kill it. And so it gives it a way to recognize your tumor that it might not have had perfectly on its own without having engineered that receptor on it. And that's basically what my PhD is
Oh,
about.
wow. Okay, that's really cool.
Been working on this for 3 years. This
Okay.
is the beginning of my fourth, and but many people have worked on it before. So our lab has been working on CAR NK cells since I want to say 2018 approximately. Our first paper was published in 2020, so I'm just estimating a few years before is when the first project started. But multiple people throughout the world work on CAR receptor, like the receptor
Mhm.
itself, but more so in the T cell biology context. But what's really fascinating is the first clinical trial with CAR natural killer cells was published last year, or sorry, 2 years ago, and it showed that there were no severe adverse events, which is huge because people who get CAR T cells can have some pretty severe neurotoxicities and cytokine release syndromes or inflammatory syndromes generally in their bodies. And so finding better cellular therapies in terms of still equally effective or even more effective, but not
Mhm.
having those side effects can have a huge impact on people's lives.
Well, that's amazing what you're doing with that research, and I know it's the fact that you were also deciding to do an MD as well. What kind of doctor are you thinking about?
I'm
Are you thinking
really
about
interested
special?
in oncology, specifically something that grew out of my passion for cancer immunology. So I'm really passionate about seeing patients who have these diagnoses and finding ways to come up with new therapies that
Yeah.
might be better. So in that realm, there's many ways to approach oncology. Some people choose to do it through being a traditional oncologist. Some people choose to do it as a radiation oncologist. So you're kind of seeing it more through the lens of somebody who provides radiation. Or you could do it through a dermatologist and maybe focus on specific types of skin cancers, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't perfectly decided which one I want to do. So I'm currently shadowing in a lot of different fields just to really make that decision, which is exciting because it reminds me that I'm going back to medical school next year. But I think will be really helpful in the long run because a lot of times in medical school, you don't get to see these subspecialties. You really have to go out of your way to shadow to see them, even as a medical student, because more of the curriculum is focused on like core clerkships.
The fact that you're like doing research on this and then maybe in the near future creating new therapies and coming up with like new solutions for your patients too. If you decide to be an oncologist, that's really cool, I think. Yeah, nice.
You. I think that's definitely what drives me. And that's why I feel like to this day, I really don't regret making this decision, even though it's a long journey.
Yeah.
It's just so fulfilling and rewarding that I am very grateful I chose to pursue this, even though it was kind of scary when I was making the
Yeah,
decision.
I know. I mean, people think it's scary to like just go to medical school in general. Some of my friends who were thinking about doing it or in medical school, there's different ways to be approaching this, like as a positive, in a positive way, in a grateful way, such as like you are right now. Like you're enjoying every step of it, you're enjoying your journey. And you shouldn't really be thinking about the end goal all the time and just being like, when am I gonna be done with this? When am I gonna finally get that degree? Because when you get that diploma and I feel like your real life starts, then you're just gonna be like, oh, well, this was it? Like,
Yeah, I think it's a huge mentality shift
yeah,
because school is never this long for most people.
yeah,
Like medical school and residency is also
yeah,
really long, right? But I think it's really hard when you explain it to family back in Europe because this
yeah,
is not like medical training doesn't take this long in Europe. You go straight through from high school to medical school, do your residency, and
yeah,
you're probably done by the age of like 25, 27. I'm
yeah,
assuming. I'm not sure exactly. So explaining to somebody that I'll be 37 when I have my first attending job just does not go well. Like people are just like, that sounds horrible. But at the same time, I mean, so you have to take that into consideration, right? So it means you can't wait to live your life
yeah,
because you're going to be 37. So
exactly.
I can't wait to live my life. So I don't wait. Like I go on the vacation. I get married. Like I do
Yeah,
what I want to do because
yeah. You booked that trip.
book the trip.
Yeah,
Obviously, there's constraints, so I'm not saying everything is perfect. Like you have to be mindful that as a MD PhD student, you're living off of a stipend. You
yeah,
probably would way more if you were working a regular
yeah,
job, but it is a sacrifice in that sense. You also have longer hours. You might have like a restricted time off. And my partner is also in the medical field, so we have to kind of navigate both having like limited days off a year and kind of coordinating that. But if he wanted to, he would. And also like always
great.
you care about each other, you make it work.
Yeah,
So
you do.
in that regard, it's just there's definitely challenges. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah,
Like there's times when me and my girlfriend sit down and have girls' night and we're just like, wow, like our friends can like have so much more flexibility in their lives than we can.
yeah,
But generally speaking, for me, it's been rewarding. Um, it's not always it doesn't always feel worth it to everybody around me, so it just kind of depends on your specific experience and your perspective. But for me, I feel like it's been really special. And something I didn't mention, which is probably really important to my story, is my dad. So growing up, my dad was one of my like science best friends because we talked about science together all the time.
oh,
He was always really supportive of me for pursuing this career. So is my mom. Both my parents are extremely supportive, but I think because my dad had the medical background, I loved talking to him about the science. And so when I was applying to MD PhD programs, my dad was diagnosed with a really, really bad kind of liver cancer or bile duct cancer. And this was something that um, really shook up my family, obviously, because he was really young. He was about 54, I think, when he got diagnosed. And we knew from the beginning that it wasn't going to have a great prognosis. And it's not great when you're in the medical field and you also
yeah,
know like all the
yeah,
minutia of be wrong. So we were really lucky that he lived for another 2 years. That was kind of unheard of with his diagnosis. But I think because I was also in that transition to the MD PhD, I really took that to heart. And I do think about him a lot when I have long days because I don't want anyone to suffer the way I did.
yeah,
And so I think it's a big part of what drives me because I just
yeah,
know like what it's like to lose somebody you love to
yeah,
these diseases. And even if I don't work on exactly cholangiocarcinoma,
Yeah.
maybe day. I think it's just like it easily translates into what I do. So I think it's a
Yeah.
big part what makes me not care so much when I have a long day because I know things can be really bad. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that whole experience just like completely changed me as a person because everybody always says things like, oh, treat people kindly. You never know what they're going through.
Yeah.
Like if you're at the grocery store or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was like until I was the person who like felt like crying 24/7.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
I think now I definitely approach just like how I interact with everybody super differently. Not that I was ever like coarse with people, but
Yeah.
I just like recognize that people carry a lot more than you can see on the outside.
Um,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. But I know he's looking down at you and he's pro so proud that you're doing what you're doing. So
That's so kind of you. I hope so.
yeah.
I'm sure he is. It's gonna be tough that he won't be there for my wedding this year, but
Yeah.
also I'm sure he'll be really happy. He got to know my fiance briefly before he passed. So I'm happy that he at least knew of him.
Yeah. Yeah. I have there been any mentors or experiences or even setbacks that have shaped the way you approach your work today?
Yeah, my fiance Jeff is definitely a huge like not mentor, but like has been super
Uh,
supportive. Doing my MD PhD
mhm.
without him would have been very different. I met him in my first month of school here, so it
Uh,
was crazy timing. But I think having somebody who understands your schedule and cares about you and cooks for you and just makes you feel like taken care of in like the small things is such a huge deal and such a big difference. So I'm incredibly grateful. And of course, he's a few years ahead of me in medical training, so he has really helpful advice when it comes to how to prepare for board exams and clerkships, whether I always listen or not. He get a lot of advice on how to study for step one, and I don't know if I really did everything, and then I totally regretted it, but it's okay. I mean, I will say like it's hard to always apply advice from more senior students because curriculums change and our curriculum changed completely.
yeah.
So that was the only reason. Otherwise, of course, I really value his advice and respect his experience. Um, but in terms of other mentors, like my research mentors have probably had the biggest impact on my life. They have always been so caring and thoughtful and just there to like make sure I succeed. My PI Todd is just like a PhD mentor that I don't think I could have asked for a better PhD mentor. He's just so responsive and like if I have questions about experiments, he'll help me think through them. Even though he's incredibly busy and runs a lab and sees patients and really does it all, I just really appreciate that he cares about his students a lot and um I hope to be that way one day when I'm in his shoes. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think doing this specific career is so challenging and rare that I, I think it's so important that you're a good mentor because there's not many other people that you can learn from if you're trying to do that, since
Yeah.
there's not many scientists. I mean, I'm very lucky at WashU. There's actually a lot of physician scientists, so I get to meet with people. And then I want to give a shout out to all the informal mentors I've had. There's been so many people in my life who I've emailed and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in what you do. I'm considering it. Can we grab a coffee or can I come by your office for 20 minutes, 30 minutes?" And so many people said yes to me when I was trying to decide if I want to do the MD PhD dual degree program. And I talked to people who had done PhD only or MD only or both until I decided. And I think that was a very important thing to me, which is kind of why I'm trying to do that for picking my specialty as well. And I highly, highly recommend doing that to people who aren't sure what they want to do because talking to other people can be very helpful. That being said, people can have very strong opinions, and sometimes it'll help you decide which
Yeah.
one you want to do more
Yeah.
because at the point and you get what you don't want, you realize, oh, actually, I really wanted to do the other one. So even though this person said don't do it, I'm starting to realize like I have feelings about doing it the other way. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you bring up though. Like messaging people on like LinkedIn or just like reaching out to people who have done what you're interested in doing and having those conversations can really help you decide whether you want to pursue this or not and just having multiple opinions because it doesn't hurt to get other people's opinions. Like at the end of the day, it is your decision, but it's never gonna be like oh, I have to do this or you don't have to do anything. It is your life at the end of the day. So I think it's
And I
good
will
to,
say,
yeah.
when you meet with people and they tell you their reasons why or why not to do a
Mhm.
certain career, it can give you a lot of perspective on like the pros and cons of doing that career. And so I think going into interviews for MD PhD programs and knowing the cons made my answer stronger. And specifically, interviewers told me, I think it shows a lot of maturity that you understand the challenges of this career path and still chose to do this.
Yeah, for sure. They don't want people to be, burned out or drop out after they just accepted you. It's a lot of time and effort. So, and then what impact do you hope to have in medicine and research?
Well, I think making an impact in medicine is definitely a long game. It takes decades to come up with something new
Yeah.
research-wise and translate it into patients. But I think that's exactly the impact I hope to have. I really hope that I can better understand how cancer develops, but also come up with therapies that can make patients' lives better, uh, be it through a longer lifespan or through better quality of life, both extremely important when it comes to a lot of cancer diagnoses. So I really hope that my research can really make people's lives better and alleviate their suffering.
Last question. What advice would you give to girls in STEM?
First of all, I think it's so important to have scientists, especially from our background, because at least in Kosovo, there's not as many opportunities to do wet lab research as there are in the US. And so if you're an Albanian American interested in that, most likely your parents might not know as much about it because they didn't have as much exposure to that growing up. Obviously, making broad generalizations here now, there's been a lot of development in that field, and I can't speak much for what happens in Albania, but I think it's so important to actually seize those opportunities and look, if you know in high school, look for universities that have research opportunities. So I specifically look for, like, I picked University of Maryland because they have a lot of amazing research that goes on there, and I wanted that to be part of my college experience. However, even at smaller universities, you can have lots of opportunities. You just need to email professors and say, I'm interested in doing research. My next bit of advice is be really open minded about the research because it might be in something that you're not super passionate about, but just really be open to learning from that experience. Like, I worked on so many different things in college that have nothing to do with what I work on today, but it still comes back to me in ways that are unexpected. For example, I was at a meeting this past week, and there was one presentation on RNA biology in like a whole conference about cell therapies. And the RNA biology research I did my freshman and sophomore year of college kind of came back to me. And I asked a question and thought of like a new idea I'd never thought of before for how to make better cell therapies. So that was such a cool full circle moment to me. And so I think if you get the opportunity to do any sort of research in undergrad and you're interested in becoming a scientist, definitely try it out and learn from that experience. And it can definitely be a stepping stone to something different that maybe you're more passionate about long term. And that's totally fine. Like, obviously, don't portray that when you interview, but I think it's important to realize like you're just starting out. It's good to just learn about something new and develop skills that you can then translate later on. For example, PCR is a lab technique that you do in a lot of labs, no matter which kind of field you're in. And that's something that I can still use today studying human immunocancer biology. So like I
Nice.
definitely think I hope more people go into this field. I think there's a reason why immigrant parents want their kids to be doctors and lawyers. I think it has to do with financial security, which
Yeah.
is something that a lot of people struggle with when they first move to the States. But I think the PhD job does not have as much financial or job security, to be honest, but I think there's a lot of amazing opportunities in industry. And so I think most people think, oh, if I get a PhD, I have to be a professor in academia.
Yeah.
That's definitely a very incredible path, and it does exist, and people do that. But I think there's also a lot of jobs in industry, in government, in science communication that I'm really grateful people on social media have been kind of making me more aware of that because I think that's really amazing. And I think more people need to know that. And so if you're interested in science, but ultimately don't want to be a professor, you can still get a PhD and work these really exciting career paths. You can work on drug development for companies, cell therapy development. A lot of times the largest clinical trials are done by companies because universities can't afford to run such clinical trials. And so there's a lot of cool opportunities to work on developing new therapies for people, whether you're a physician or a scientist, and you don't have to be a doctor to do that.
I have this rapid fire round questions, about 10 questions to ask you. So, um, are you ready? All right. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I know.
Okay. Organized planner or wing it as I go?
Very organized.
I mean, you have to be at this point. You got so much to do. Most favorite Albanian song?
Definitely Elvana Jata, but I don't know which one. I'm hearing it in my head, but I can't remember what it's called.
You want
Sorry.
to sing it? Oh, okay. I know what song that is. I'll look it up after this. Biggest pet peeve that makes you instantly irritated.
Um, Chewing with your mouth open.
That is a gross one.
My
Yeah,
God,
guilty.
oh my God, so annoying.
Guilty pleasure, TV show or movie.
Hmm. Not sure. I feel like I have many in phases. Right now I'm watching Bridgerton, which is kind of fun.
One habit you're secretly proud of.
Uh, Probably working out. I used to like post a lot when I first started my Instagram account. And now I realize like I just don't post anymore because it's become such a like ingrown habit in my life. So I'm really proud of that. I used to not like work out as consistently, but it became a really like strong habit in grad school.
Actually, this brings us, I did want to ask you, I did want to ask you about your Instagram account. I did want to
Yeah.
ask you, you're kind of like low-key an influencer a little bit, right?
I would say I used to be. I'm not really anymore, probably because I just don't post anymore. But when I started my Instagram account, it was my junior year of college, right around when I was deciding should I do MD PhD or not. So I decided to be extremely public about that. Like, what is it like to pursue this career path? Should I do it, should or not? And I remember thinking it was a bit of a risk because if I chose not to do it, like the whole Instagram account is called MD
Yeah.
PhD. But I think it was really cool because I got to be really transparent about what it was like to explore
Yeah.
choosing to do that.
Mhm.
And then starting my MD PhD, studying for the MCAT, I made videos with other people who were pre-med about how we studied for the MCAT. I got to meet this incredible group of people online who are either MD or MD PhD or PhD. I really have made such wonderful friendships from that Instagram account, and I'm so grateful for that. And then when I started M1 and white coat ceremony happened, it really blew up. And I mean, blew up is like a strong statement because
Yeah.
I basically ended up getting like 10,000 followers, but that was really big
Still
considering
good, yeah. I
it
mean,
was fun.
EaglePod hasn't even gotten to 10,000, so
You will one day. You just have to keep posting. But I mean, I think that's the key, right? Like you have to be really consistent. And during my gap years, I would like prepare posts all the time and put advice on how to apply and how to explore and how to get shadowing hours. So I really put a lot of time and effort into those posts. And then um during med school, it was still fun, but I think eventually I just got really busy and I didn't really have the same bandwidth to post. And
yeah.
also just a part of me just like I'm not sure. I think it just became multiple years after I started the account, and I felt like I really enjoyed mentoring people online. So I still do that today, and I set up Zoom calls and I give people advice on their applications. But something about posting just started to lose its like excitement for me, so I stopped doing it. And eventually, I thought grad school would be easier, like PhD, but
Yeah.
I think things just got so busy making sure I get in as many experiments as possible, and then making sure I have time to like exercise and sleep and spend time with my loved ones. So I just completely stopped posting. So I post on my story a little bit sometimes, but I think it just really lost its allure to post. So I stopped. But I hope people are still always excited to reach out if they have questions. I'm always happy to mentor people. Social media is full of so much just like, I want to say bragging a little bit. So I think I stopped liking that aspect of social media and it made me a little deterred from posting. There's a lot of fake things out there.
Yeah, that is true, especially nowadays with everything going on. But I mean, if and all your old posts are still there, so if there's anyone out there, they could help. Um, the information's still out there. Yeah. And then back to our rapid fire round. How do you usually handle stress? Meditation, music, snacks, or do you just like let it all be chaotic?
I would say exercise is my number one. I think
Uh-huh.
just like a nice quick cardio session on the bike is helpful. And
Okay.
then I always have dinner with my fiance. We like try to coordinate. So it's nice to like I
Oh,
feel like I always had that growing up. I don't know about your Albanian family, but my
yeah.
Albanian everybody we ate dinner
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
I like love that we do that
Yeah.
and that's an important
Yeah.
part of my upbringing. So I hope
Yeah.
to just like catch up on your day and like
Yeah. It's always nice.
that's helpful.
Yeah. Most spontaneous thing you've ever done.
Mm. I mean, probably multiple things in my life, but morning sunrise hikes are probably my favorite. So, because I'm not a morning person, so whenever I did them, I remembered. So, one was hiking up to the Hollywood sign with my best friends from college at sunrise during our spring break, junior year of college. That was really fun. And then the other one I'm thinking of is hiking up to the Kalaya in Prizren with my cousin and her friend at sunrise when we were growing up. That was really beautiful too.
And then one word your friends would use to describe you.
Probably passionate, at least I hope. I put my heart and soul into a lot of things that I choose to
Oh,
do, which is why once I didn't feel that way about my Instagram account, I started to
yeah.
step back because I really like to put my all into something I care about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love all that. And it was amazing interviewing you finally. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's just so awesome hearing you talk about your journey and, all the wonderful things that you're doing. So thank you.
For having me. This was so much fun and
Yeah.
good luck on your journey. I hope you get to
Yeah.
start medical school in the next few years. That'll be
Well,
really exciting.
thank you.